as the president has called it for some reason, quote, Liberation Day. So far, Trump has shared very few details on the looming plan, including just how aggressive or generous the tariffs might be. We do know a 25% tariff on imported vehicles is expected to take effect. The White House and many Republicans have admitted the tariffs will cause some initial pain, which may include higher prices, but they say that will eventually drive up domestic production and create jobs. Democrats and some Republicans are skeptical.
Anyone who says there may be a little bit of pain before we get things right need to talk about farmers who are one crop away from bankruptcy. They don't have time, so we've got to be crisp on this implementation. Otherwise, we could do damage that's irreparable to farmers.
As the president has admitted, tariffs will create pain for some businesses, and I think Wisconsin will be particularly hard hit with all the manufacturing and agricultural interests. He's used tariffs in the past effectively to get nations to do what they should have done anyway. Right now, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm concerned.
So let's talk more about what to expect from this big tariff deadline tomorrow. My first guest tonight is David McGarry. He is research director at the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. He's up late with me tonight here live on the Final Five to talk about it. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight, David. So you heard some of the members of Congress speaking about it. Tariffs have always been one of the president's favorite tools when it comes to economic policy. But what's your take on this?
The president unquestionably is doing what he thinks is best to kickstart the American economy. But the problem is that tariffs are not the answer. There is nothing in either history or economic theory that suggests that tariffs will, in fact, achieve the goals that their advocates say they will. And I want to go back to something that Senator Tillis has just said about farmers. And the fact is that tariffs hurt farmers quite a lot because farmers need to export in order to make money. And during the first Trump administration, actually, Trump's tariffs deeply wounded farmers, and the only way that they got around those harms was to give more subsidization to the farmers. So we had this unvirtuous cycle, this vicious cycle, if you will, of tariffs harming American industry and then the federal government having to re-enter the playing field to bail farmers out. And we see those sorts of results go across the American economy, from farming to manufacturing and many other industries.
There were a number of tariffs that President Trump put into effect during his first administration, some of which carried over into the Biden years, some on China, some on electric vehicles out there. So it seems as though they're not to the extent that President Trump had seen them, but it looked as though for some reason the Biden administration saw some advantage of keeping at least some in place at the time.
Yeah, unless we place full blame upon the Trump administration, the fact is that President Biden more or less continued Trump's protectionist policies, and he more or less inflicted the same protectionist harms on American industry. The fact is that there's a sort of attraction to tariffs, right? They say that we can stimulate our own industries and do this at the cost of tariff fees that are paid by foreigners. But the problem is that it's just not true. Both the Trump and the Biden tariffs hurt American industries that rely on imports tremendously. They cost American consumers tremendously. The American consumers who have to pay for basic things like energy or for groceries or for automobiles. And at the end of the day, within even the targeted industries like in manufacturing, we saw net reductions in workforce where tariffed specific slices of manufacturing that benefited from tariffs would see small gains in employment, but the larger manufacturing industry would see tremendous degrowth. And they would see tremendous job losses to thousands of lost jobs for every job gained by tariffs. And so in the final analysis, tariffs simply are not worth the squeeze.
We should point out your organization, the Taxpayer Protections Alliance, you are certainly not a left-wing organization out here. You're looking at a lot of these pro-business, pro-growth policies and ways that you can further that in the American marketplace. But, you know, I think there's also I feel like there's a lack of understanding in this administration, as evidenced when Caroline Leavitt got up and said tariffs were a, quote, tax cut for Americans.
Saying that tariffs are a tax cut for Americans is the equivalent of saying that 1 + 1 = 4 or that up is down. The fact is that tariffs are paid just as a sort of mechanical matter by American companies that import goods. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, where are those costs, or who whom are those costs transmitted to? And again, the answer is American manufacturing, American businesses that rely on imports, and ultimately the American consumers are going to see price increases due to tariffs. And something else that I'll add to that is that President Trump campaigned on a lot of very sound economic policies to reverse the inflationary policies of Joe Biden. But tariffs, again, cut completely against the rest of President Trump's economic agenda, and are frankly sort of a puzzling outlier from a lot of the good things that are in his agenda.
So if you are looking at a way, not you particularly, David McGarry, but if the United States is looking at a way to encourage people, as the president says, to buy more American products, because keep in mind, Ronald Reagan was not too enamored with the idea of putting tariffs on the likes of Mexico and China back in the 1980s. How do you find a way to encourage Americans to buy more American products, if that's the focus?
Unleash American businesses. Take away a lot of the regulatory constraints that are hampering our ability to compete globally. The fact is, I have faith, and I think that the economic data bear this out, but I have full faith in American entrepreneurs and in American businesses to create world-class products that are fully capable of competing on both the domestic front and the international front without these sorts of handouts from the government.
David McGarry from the Taxpayer Protections Alliance up late live with me on the Final Five. Hey, good to see you tonight. We appreciate the perspective.
Thanks so much.
And we're back on the Final Five. Senate Republicans have a plan to get around any more